Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for that, Meg. And thank you to everybody at Power to Fly for making all of this possible today. I hope you're all having a great day. So today we are talking about queerness as a superpower, because for generations, being LGBTQIA plus was seen as kryptonite for a successful career, but we think of it more as a superpower. So first, I'd love to start off with a little introductions with both of our guests, Leslie and Andrea. Would one of you care to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, where you're calling in from today, where you're based out of? Andrea, I'm going to go with you on this.
I'm happy to. Thank you, John, and so nice to be here. I join you from our brownstone in Park Slope, Brooklyn. So sounds like we're not that far from each other, actually. And it's a beautiful day out there, a little hot. My wife and I, Milena, who's a co-founder of Power to Fly, we have 4 kids. So you'll probably hear them. 2 will be coming back from school soon. So right now it's relatively quiet, and the 3-year-old is on the iPad, and the 15-year-old, oh my God, is in a Zoom class. Up, and Leslie's camera's blocked.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. But hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, I think the meeting powers that be have my camera blocked, but hopefully we'll get that fixed. Just to introduce myself.
Well, we've definitely got you on audio.
Great. Excellent. Yeah, so just to introduce myself, as Andrea did, my name is Leslie O'Hara. I'm a partner, as the intro said, at PwC here in Los Angeles. And I just wanted to say happy Pride to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. In the intro, you probably heard that I have a few hats here at PwC. My day job is tax consulting, which I find super interesting, but I realize sounds fairly boring. And I think the other roles that I think are very applicable to today's conversation are more of my diversity inclusion roles. And for that, I'm very passionate about that work and have different levels of responsibility in the firm nationally from a D&I standpoint. I think the one fun fact that I would like to share is that I got a puppy during the pandemic, probably like most of you. And so I say that as a fun fact, but also a disclaimer that Oscar may rear his head at some point during this discussion. He's notorious for dropping a toy in my lap and wanting me to throw it when I'm on important Zooms like this. So Oscar may make an appearance at some point, but happy to be with you guys, and thanks for the welcome.
Excellent. And Oscar and everybody else is welcome here today. So as I said, we're going to be discussing queerness as a superpower, specifically as it relates to, queerness and in the workplace. And so for generations, as I said, being LGBTQI plus was seen as being kryptonite for a successful career and in a personal life. But now, people are, the times have changed, and people are now seeing queerness as a superpower. I'd like to ask both of you, how does this idea resonate in your own lives?
Pick us.
Leslie?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
yeah,
Leslie.
I can jump in. Yeah, perfect. I would say this does resonate with me on the career side in particular. I think there's been a shift in the 16 years that I've been in the workforce. When I started at the firm in New York, I did fortunately have the support of my close colleagues and supervisors. But, outside of that core group, I would say being queer wasn't kryptonite. It was more neutral to ignored. So there was an element of covering that, you would have to go through mentally in your day. If you're in a wider group, is this something that I want to disclose on this day to this group? Or am I just not in the mood, frankly, today to navigate that? And so I think fast forward, 15, 16 years today, I think a lot of companies are seeing the benefits of diverse teams for obvious reasons. And, there is more broad support for queerness. And I do think it can be a wonderful differentiator for, leaning into that change for all of the queer professionals. And on a personal level, I would say that it definitely was kryptonite when I first came out. I grew up in the conservative South, Alabama specifically. And, for some certain friends, certain extended family, it was very much kryptonite. I would love to say that shifted over the years, and I think it has a bit, but we're not quite to that superpower level yet, unfortunately, but hopeful one day that we'll get there.
Yeah, yeah. Andrea?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I spent most of my career in the closet, terrified that people would find out. And so I was sure that it would ruin my personal life. I thought it would lead to the end of our marriage, and I thought it would lead to the end of my career. And so I knew who I was and who I am since I was little, and I saw society's reaction to it. From the moment I went in middle school for Halloween dressed as a princess. And I thought I looked so cute, and I thought I was going to have such a fun day, and I'll never forget the reactions. And so I learned to hide it. Coming out for me was about being honest and being transparent and being vulnerable. And I have to say that I talk with when I come to business classes to give talks or anything like that, I really want to emphasize that there's so many depressing and hard and dark stories of being transgender and what we face, the discrimination that in general gay people faced in the 50s. It's hard. Even just going to the grocery store, I'm probably going to get at least one confused look that could be a dirty look, or so there's a lot to fear. But when you put the bravery first, what I found is that my marriage is probably 10x better since, like, we had a good relationship. But oh my God, it's sexier, it's more fun, it's closer, it's warm, it's personal life. The kids, they weren't ashamed of me. Luckily live in New York, and we were in Tribeca, and now in Park Slope even more. They brag, I have two moms. My other mom's trans. Like, it's fucking superpower. The schools love it. They are so happy there's a trans mom in the school. It's exciting, it's fun, it's not bad at all. And so on a personal life, and is just the color and the brightness, and the same grocery strip that I might get this dirty look, I'm also extremely likely to get someone who's like, "Ooh, I love your outfit," or like, da da da. So there's sunshine, there's happiness, there's brightness. And on a career level, Ken Lehrer was one of the founders of Huffington Post, and I think how he thought of product is that I always admired this, of how he thought at a basic level that it's not exciting enough yet. We got to make it more exciting. The HuffPost page was a little bit ugly. It was like it wasn't like a designer's dream, but the point was to make a splash. What's the top story? Not what are the 85 stories? What's the big story? And all the product decisions and business decisions he made kind of acknowledged that as humans, we default to boring. And that I realized, since I work in viral and contagious media, things with strong reactions create a lot of love, can create a lot of hate. And right in the middle of all of those things is just boring. And so when I think about queerness as a superpower, the message I'd like to share with anyone who might be trans and in the closet, or who might be gay and in the closet, or gay but feel like you have to tone yourself down all the time, is that what I found, and it might be the privilege of being able to work in a creative industry and run a creative agency. So it's easier when I show up with pink hair because we're creative. But actually not toning it down, going all in, people can have fun. And when you're brave enough to share the fun, it's just more fun. And so something that might be boring, like taxes or a content management system, actually you ended up having fun in that meeting. And life is short. Shouldn't we have fun? And I found that with my own team, that I was terrified, along with losing the clients, I thought I'd have employees leave. It's actually more fun. It's just this actually can be a superpower. My head of revenue is openly gay, and I always loved that he didn't hide it. He'd throw in a gay joke in the meeting, and I saw the way he did it was with enough confidence that he could share that fun. And I think that's the part where it can become a superpower for us. Is like there's an element of where we can, as a trans person in particular, I think, you can become very defensive and very scared of people's reactions, which can make you very scary, and when they see that you're willing to kind of share the fun side of it and have this, I found that we actually grew a lot as a business. We've got new clients, but our current clients spend more. And even when they're conservative, which we have 2 companies we work with, which are actually politically conservative. And they're not horrible humans, as I thought maybe that from my perspective, they'd be. Like, they wanted to show they are good humans, and they use my correct pronouns, and they're incredibly respectful. So I think it can be a really fun world.
Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I just want to say something that I should have said right at the top of this. We're getting some audience questions in. So please, folks that are out there viewing, please feel free to send those questions our way, and we will try to work as many of those into this conversation as possible. Next up, I'd like to, Leslie, I'd like to ask you this. So Power to Fly CEO likes to talk about standing in your circle of power. And that can be reflected in the words you use, like you were just saying, Andrea, like not apologizing, or just in how you hold and present yourself. What do you think is the sort of equivalent of standing in your circle of power as a queer person?
Yeah, I think Andrea made a lot of good points on that and what she was saying before. But as a cisgender female lesbian, I realize I'm coming at the circle of power question with a bit of privilege. But for me, some of that is minimizing my thoughts of self-doubt and imposter syndrome that unfortunately sometimes creep in. PwC and my background and accounting is predominantly a male dominated world. And so presenting my ideas with confidence, directly addressing colleagues who may inadvertently interrupt me or others in the room, and not shying away from, let's say, stretch opportunities just because I don't have every single one of the prerequisites that are, that is on the list for that particular assignment or job. Of course, I'm not perfect at this. There are certain days where, self-doubt comes calling, and I have little sticky notes all around my computer, which you can't see at the moment, but they're there. I also kind of go through, one of my tactics is to go through this work history or history review, where I think about a time that if my self-doubt is, I'm not sure if I'm ready for this opportunity, I go through a time in my history where I had an opportunity and how did I do with that opportunity? And 9 times out of 10, that's a positive memory. That's a positive history. And that reinforces to me that you can do this. You are qualified for this. And I think lastly, having work friends and supervisors in a community at work, supervisors in particular that can push you to challenge yourself. So if you're saying, I'm not sure if I'm right to speak on this topic, you can have a supervisor who's supportive of you and is objective and says, no, Leslie, I think you actually are right. You should do this. This will be good. This will be good. And you are 100% qualified to do this. So I think that's also helpful to have that push sometimes when you're not feeling so powerful on certain days.
Yeah. We all have those days, right? And they're sometimes the hardest to pull through. Now, Andrea, I'd like to take it back to you for a minute, since we have a question from the audience that relates to what you were speaking about before. This comes from Emily. Emily says, I have a question on how the trans community can learn to thrive in business, not merely survive or get table scraps. How do we, the trans community sees ownership of our agency and provides for our brothers, sisters, and non-binary kin. You know, she says it sometimes feels like business literacy, be it corporate or cooperative, is a very low priority for the community. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good question. Thank you, Emily, for asking it. I want to balance. I answered some in chat there. I don't know if it's helpful, the chat answers, but because I know a lot of people are just on audio. But before I answer, I do want to say that I want to give a message of optimism and hope, but I do need to balance that with an acknowledgement of the privilege that I have as a white trans person, and also that the majority of my career and my successes were established in the closet. So HuffPost was acquired, and it was a success that you couldn't take away from me if you were going to, but I have to acknowledge that maybe I wouldn't have been given the opportunity to prove that success if I was out of the closet. So I don't want to, in my attempt to give positive narratives and optimism, you know, gloss over the privilege that I've had personally and the struggles that people have and face, because they're very real and the discrimination is very real. But to give the positive message, I think in particular for trans people, the hardest part for us is centering our own happiness and sense of confidence, because it gets chipped away. The other privilege I have is I live in this, we have 4 kids, there's 6 of us in this house, and it's full of love. And so I try not to cry during this part, but I get to come home and feel loved. And if you're living alone, that can be much harder when you went out and you got a little slice of hatred or disgust or something. And so I get to come and recharge batteries every day like this. And you know, with COVID, we never even leave here almost. So, but so it's a little bit on the privilege side. But what I've found is that vulnerability is our trans superpower. No matter how vulnerable anyone else is in the room, if you're visibly trans, you're probably the most vulnerable person in the room. So instead of, that means, like, I realized we climbed Kilimanjaro for our honeymoon, Milana and I got altitude sickness. And what it does to you is it cuts off your vision. You see less and less and less and less of the world until you can barely see your hands. That's what fear can do to you. You stop seeing the smiles. You stop looking for the eye contact that's positive. You look down and you have your blinders on. When you embrace your confidence and you embrace your queerness and you embrace being vulnerable, you catch all the positive. You see the smile. You see that positive message. And I found, as a business leader, Breanna Brown was completely right about the power of vulnerability. It is the real deal. And we get that. We get access to that. So if we center that, I think we have the chance to be successful. And you have to understand the biggest fear for other people doing business with a trans person is not our transness per se, but the narratives about us being depressed and about us being suicidal and us having no confidence. Those are our real enemies, are those narratives. And those are the ones you have to balance so that you bring out your confidence. After the meeting, go decompress. Like, I do laundry all day, I do gardening all day, all these things to balance the stress of being vulnerable. So that when you show up, if they feel, I realize, to keep all my clients and sign new clients, they just want to see the confidence. They want to know, like, nobody wants to do business and do a new deal with someone who's super depressed. If they don't want it, it's just how it works. So that's the hardest part about mental health in the workplace is, aren't we allowed to be depressed? Aren't we allowed to be sad? Aren't we allowed to have a hard day? And how do we share that and not be fake and false and be real? But at the same time, you have to, especially as a trans person, be aware that that could be crippling your chance of growth, is that sense of fear that someone might have, like that I'm about to start to work with someone who's struggling that hard.
Well, can I ask both of you then, because I agree with you, and I think that's very true. Do you have any resources or outlets that you'd be able to suggest to some of the folks that are tuning in today, such as books or podcasts or organizations that help to deal with these sorts of issues and help people sort of start to put themselves first when it comes to specifically, queerness in the workplace? And any resources that you have found helpful that you could share with others?
Yeah, I think for me, Out and Equal and Out Leadership are two good organizations / websites that have a lot of toolkits and different materials for navigating being out at work or coming out at work.
Yeah.
That are helpful. So I would check those out. And then I would say for anyone who's joining that is in an organization that has what we call an ERG group or an infinity group, I would say that those organizations within the workplace, often have wonderful resources in and of themselves, not to mention a community of folks that you may identify with and that may be helpful just for informal coaching.
I would Google The Power of Vulnerability. If you haven't watched her TED Talk, Brené Brown's talk, just watch it every week until you really oh my God, get the full power of that. And then for me personally, outside of that, I find just music brings joy in life. I obsess with music. Every Friday we have more artists alive today producing more new music than has been through all of history. And so in addition, I have a little speaker that I carry in my purse, and I play it with my kids outside. When I'm walking outside, I have music, and I always make it adjust to the environment. It's not like I'm there playing death metal in a peaceful street. It'll be like Louis Armstrong or, something that really adapts. But I found that it's a wonderful way. In fact, our elementary school, the principal was like, Andrea, it's so amazing.
Yeah, it looks like we got Andrea frozen or without audio. John, are you getting the same thing?
Yeah, Andrea, we weren't able to catch that last bit. If you wouldn't mind repeating yourself quickly.
Oh, just that. I think
we left off at death metal.
Just like at the elementary school now, all the other parents were like, I love your music. And now there's a speaker at the school I donated there, and they play it for drop off every morning. And I just, music, it's something you have to do whatever personally makes you happy. It has to be the number one thing you do. So gardening makes me happy. My kids make me happy. Music makes me happy. It's different for all of us. Happiness is not something you can be all day it's something, the pursuit of happiness is what we have the right to. So whatever brings you back to joy and happiness, find those things and then repeat them as often as you can every day.
Now, we've only got a few minutes left, and we could go on for another whole half hour about this, but since this has been such a, sort of warm, positive messaging in our conversation today, I'd like to close by asking, very often when we're younger, I think we're harder on ourselves, maybe because we don't have the experience that we have as professional people now. If you each could go back in time and speak to your younger professional self, what piece of advice would you give that person?
I think we've talked a lot about this in our chat.
Right,
so I think it's going to be repetitive, but this word in particular, came up a lot it seems like for both Andrea and myself. And I think it is confidence. I think I would tell my younger self to be confident. Don't shrink. You have a history of doing a great job. Be confident that you will get it done and embrace those new challenges. Don't shy away from them. Find your voice. Speak up. You do have a point of view, even in a room full of overly confident, cisgender, straight white men. Find your voice, speak up, and don't shrink.
100% agree with you that message cannot be overstated at all. Andrea, anything to share? Though you have given so much of.
Leslie said it perfectly. I would say, girl, you can do it. And I think all of us as trans people, we always think back, what will we tell? And it's, girl, you can do it. You can do it. You have everything you need.
Yeah. Well, I just wish to extend our thanks to both of you for sharing today, both your personal, professional experiences, and a thank you to everybody at Power to Fly for putting this together. It's been a real pleasure meeting you both and discussing with you about these issues. There's some information in the chat that folks have put in there for additional resources and links to websites that we talked about today. So I think at that juncture, we will turn it back over to you, Meg.